Okay, welcome back. Um, First off, congrats on making your first commit and setting up your project. And now we're gonna actually start adding some features and turning it into a real app. So before I like to code out any features or design any features, I find it useful to kind of just chart out the flow of what you want to accomplish or the feature you want to accomplish. So a simple, easy way to do this is just flow charts. You can use pen and paper. You can use Keynote, Sketch, PowerPoint, whatever you want. But pretty much it just helps to visualize kind of how the user is going to interact with your app, and then um, makes it a lot easier to code that up and design it. So let's think about the first time user who just downloaded your app, and what are they going to do now? So this is a simple flow I just whipped up. They download the app, they hit the sign up button, they fill out the sign up form, they hit the submit button, and then they can use the app and they're now a registered user. Um, so if you're familiar with Snapchat, it's very similar. Snapchat makes you either log in or sign up to use the app. You have to be registered to use the app. Um, that's somewhat common, but I don't always recommend that approach of making someone sign up to actually use your app. A lot of times it's good to let them play with it before signing up. Uh, but since we're making a Snapchat clone and we want people to be signed up if they're going to use the app, we're going to put that wall up right at the beginning. So I put an asterisk right next to hit submit button because we actually want to save this data on the back end, which I explained previously is going to be Firebase. So once they hit submit, we're going to want to send that info up to Firebase to store it. So then next time they launch the app, we can talk to Firebase and see if they're logged in or not, um, etc. So cool. So that's the flow, fairly simple. And now let's actually go make this happen. So open up Xcode again, open up your project, and where we left off last time, you should just have this orange view or whatever color you set, and just one view controller. So first thing I want to do is actually rename this view, and just this title. This will mostly show up on the storyboard, but if we have a navigation bar, this would actually show up there too. So um, let's just make this splash view for now. And I'm actually going to delete these two classes that Xcode um, set up for us because I kind of want to make our own from scratch and just show you that process. So just select these two, Control Delete, and move to trash. So now we have splash view. We want to get rid of this because we don't have that class anymore. So click on Ghost Chat and let's make our own view controller class that's going to represent the splash view, which will show the sign up button and the login button. The first view you'll see basically. So hit File, New, and then File. So this is where you go to add new files to your project or create new files. You can see you can actually add storyboards and views. We'll get to that later. But what we want to do now is just source Cocoa Touch class. And then we want to create a subclass of UI View Controller because this is going to control that view like I talked about last video. And since this is what we're deeming the splash view, let's call it Splash View Controller. And yeah, again, make sure it's Objective-C, and we're good to go. So that's going to set up a view controller. This is asking where we want to save it. Make sure this is always clicked. That's very important. Just make sure it's always added to the target. Basically means anytime that we ship the app out, this gets shipped with it. So definitely click that and then just hit create. All right, and now we have our splash view controller. That's kind of bugging me having it below there, so I'm just gonna move that down, and also move this down. Okay, cool. So splash view controller. We're gonna go ahead and actually delete everything but the view did load, because we don't need it. And we're gonna delete this comment because we know what view did load does. It gets called every time the view is ready to be loaded. And we got our .h and .m. So cool. We have our first view controller class, subclass that we made. So let's go back to the storyboard. And let's call this splash view. So it already recognizes that there's a view controller subclass called splash view. So just hit enter. And now this view is now connected to our new view. So pretty cool. And I'm going to make my theme kind of orange throughout. Again, feel free to have fun with it and customize it. But I'm just going to go with orange. So just looking back at our view or our flow, we need a sign up button and a login button basically. So in order to drag objects onto the view, you just use this like Object Explorer down here, Object Library. And this is the second one from the right. So let's search for, we need 2 buttons. So if you search button, you'll see, you have a variety of options, but we're just going to use a standard button. So you can just drag that onto the view actually. So we'll do that for login, and we'll do this for sign up. Cool. So we have 2 buttons. Now we're going to get into actually constraining these buttons and laying them out. So what I mean by that is we need to tell Xcode and the app how we want these buttons laid out relative to the view. So if we have different screen sizes, Xcode knows by these rules or constraints that this is how the button should look on different views. And I'll kind of just show you that as we go through. So we're going to make the bottom one login and the top one sign up. So let's select the bottom one. Let's go ahead and you can rename it on the left just for simplicity. So login button. And there's several different ways to make constraints. I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest. But feel free to look into auto layout. If you just Google auto layout tutorials or auto layout on YouTube, there's a lot of great content out there that'll show you how to use auto layout, which is what we're doing right now. So I'm going to hit Control and then make sure the login button's selected, and I'm going to click in the middle, and then I'm going to drag it down. So you see how it's highlighting the whole view. I'm going to just let go. And it's going to say, okay, it's going to give me options to constrain this button to different things. So first one, vertical spacing to bottom layout guide. I'm also going to hold shift, by the way. So I'm going to hit hold shift, and I'm going to click on this, and that's going to constrain the button to the bottom of the view. So we definitely want that. And then I'm also going to center this button in the container, which just makes sense. And then I have these 2 selected, just hit enter. Okay, so, and this is the constraint inspector right here, right to the right of the attributes, or size inspector, but these are your constraints. So you can see I'm constrained to the bottom by 70 points, and I'm constrained to the middle. So 70, let's just make it 70. But you can change it from here, and that's kind of the easiest way to change it. Okay, that's pretty cool, but let's make this button a little bigger and look more like a button. So I'm actually going to set the width by constraining it to the edges. So I'll show you how to do this. Again, make sure the button's selected, Control click, drag to the left, and hit leading space to container margin. And let's make that, say, 50. And then same thing over here, trailing space to container margin, 50. And we can actually delete this constraint now because we don't need to know. We're already telling Xcode, okay, 50 from the right, 50 from the left. That's how wide it should be. So we don't need to worry about aligning to the center. That's already going to align to the center. So, okay. So we got 50 from the left, 50 from the right, 70 from the bottom. So all we have to do is, now you can faintly see because it's orange, but there's like these little orange outline marks. That's just telling you that the way it's showing now isn't actually how it's going to look. So we need to update the frame to basically represent the new constraints we've added. So to do that, you're just going to hit this guy, resolve auto layout issue, and then you're going to hit update frame. Now be careful with this guy because you can actually update the frame for all views, but you normally don't want to do that because this button will actually disappear because we haven't laid out any constraints. So we're just going to do it for this view, selected view. Okay, cool. You can see our button looks much more like a button. I'm actually going to add a height constraint as well. So this is another way you can add constraints by hitting this, this pin tool. This is how quite a few people actually do all their constraints. But yeah, I'm gonna make the height 50. I found that's like a really good button height. And then again, I'm gonna update the frame. Okay, that's a pretty cool looking button. But let's give it a title. So just gonna go to the attributes inspector right here. Again, make sure the button's selected. Let's call it login. And let's change the text color to white to make it pop a little more. Actually, you know what? Let's give it the background a color so you can kind of see the button laid out. All right, cool. And then let's make the text color orange, log in, and let's beef up the font to maybe 20. And I like changing the style to like medium for buttons. Medium and 20 is kind of my standard. Cool, so we have the login button designed, and it's constrained, so Xcode knows what to do with it. This button still doesn't have any constraints, so Xcode has no idea how to lay this button out. I'm going to show you kind of some tools and tricks with auto layout as we go along that'll make life a lot easier. So since we're going to want this button to be the same height and width as the login button for consistency, I can actually control, again, we're going to create constraints, so make sure you have this button selected, control click, and then hit the login button, let go. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to do equal height, equal width, and then I'm going to do center horizontally. So basically, equal height, equal width, self-explanatory of this button, and then center horizontally, it'll be in the middle of it, and then vertical spacing, how far should it be from that button vertically. And bam, it's already, this button's completely constrained. If you have bad constraints, by the way, Xcode will throw an error like it'll be red and it'll tell you like you got to, this will be red, and it'll be like you got to fix these constraints because I don't know what to do with it. But orange is fine. Orange just means you got to update the frame. So let's update the frame, and bam. So you can see it's equal height, equal width, and we're good to go. So let's do what we did with the other button. We're gonna set the background to white. We're gonna set the text color to orange, beef it up to 20, and change it to medium. And also call it sign up. Cool, so we have our sign up and login buttons good to go. And I'm actually gonna move this a little closer. Again, just by going to the constraints tab, making sure the sign up button's selected, and I'm gonna make it 40. Cool. So yeah, that's now our view is set up and aligned. If we run the project, we should see sign up and login button. And the reason for the white, that's actually the launch screen. It's blank right now. We'll design one shortly. But yeah, cool. All right, we see the sign up and login. You can tell that they're getting hit, but they're not doing anything. That's because we haven't wired it up to our view controller yet. And that's what we're going to do next episode. So yeah, let's keep rolling. And I'm going to take a break here, and we'll come right back and get this all wired up so users can sign up.